Hey everyone, I am Tracy, your host for today, and I'm here with my good friends and co-hosts, Cynthia and Lorraine. Ladies, please say a quick hello before we get started.
I'm Lorraine Keim. I'm your mindset wellness coach and certified clinical hypnotherapist. Welcome.
And I'm Cynthia Penner. I'm a certified menopause coaching specialist and author of the Menopause Map book series.
Thank you. All right, so you've stopped doing some things you used to love. Maybe you told yourself it's because you're being practical now, more realistic. You're maybe more careful. Maybe you've just accepted that certain dreams or chances aren't really for women at this stage of life. But what if that's not wisdom talking? What if that's fear? And it's just gotten very good at sounding reasonable. Today's guest is someone who has spent years helping women in midlife recognize exactly that. Cheryl Fisher is a certified life and mindset coach and the host of the top 2% globally ranked podcast, Mind Your Midlife. Through one-on-one coaching and masterclasses, she's helped women around the world go from feeling completely stuck to launching businesses, rebuilding relationships, and finding their confidence again. Fantastic. When she's not recording or coaching, you'll find her on the golf course, knitting, reading, or holding her own at a mahjong table. Ah, very cool. Cheryl, welcome to the Happy Healthy Her podcast. We're very glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Good. Okay, we spend so much time in this season of life managing everything around us, our jobs, our families, our health, and somewhere in all of that, we stop checking in with ourselves to see what's actually going on inside, and we stop paying attention to how we're feeling. We stop questioning the stories we're telling ourselves about why we think we can't, or why we shouldn't, or why now maybe just isn't the right time. And then we convince ourselves that it's just because we're being responsible. Cheryl is here to gently but very directly call that out. So let's get into it. Cheryl, I know you talk about fear showing up in midlife, maybe disguised as being careful or prepared. Can you walk us through what an example of that might actually look like in everyday life?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Midlife, as you all know, is a time of such change. Everything potentially, your parents, your kids, retirement is coming, your body, that it can be this weird combination of overwhelming and also maybe a little empty, because maybe you just mentioned it a minute ago, maybe you're not in the race every day that you were in for a while and you suddenly have a little bit of free time. So the combination of having a little bit of time maybe, and then this overwhelm with everything changing, means sometimes we kind of go into, I think, self-protection mode. It's too much. And having a healthy relationship with fear is good. It keeps us from running in the street or touching the hot stove or whatever. But when we just sort of stop making decisions and we get into a situation where maybe you have aging parents and you got to figure out what to do with them and what do we do with the stuff in the house and how is it all going to work out, and you just can't make a decision, that's a sign like that fear is taking over because we get afraid to do the wrong thing.
Very true. I know someone, I call him out on that. I say, you're living in fear. He's like, nope, I'm being, smart. This is how I want to be. I want to not spend a cent on anything ever. And for 30 years, he has been saying, just wait 5 years, then everything will be better. Just wait 5 years, then you can buy just wait 5 years, then the economy is going to be better. Just wait 5 years. Oh my goodness, 30 years has gone by. How do you help somebody see that, okay, you know what? You are living in lack. You are living in fear.
So what I do with my coaching clients to identify this, because I think to Tracy's point, we always, maybe not always, we so often want to say, I'll do it when life is more calm, or when things aren't as busy, or when the summer gets here or when the kids go back to school, or, we always have a thing 5 years from now, whatever it is. And so it's hard to realize until we maybe have someone help us look at it from the outside that we're doing that. And so with my coaching clients, I do a profile to start. It's called the being profile, and it identifies what's kind of running our decisions. Is it fear? Is it care? Is it vulnerability? Is it being authentic? And that fear one, goodness, it often shows a little bit of an unhealthy relationship there. Sometimes we kind of need to see the number or the words on the page to recognize it.
Right. I'm very interested in that assessment. I mean, without having to explain the actual details of the assessment, can you give a little bit of intention? I mean, it came about for a purpose. And so the purpose of this assessment is to kind of do what? Like what's going on at the moment with you so that you can kind of see your picture, I guess.
So the idea is not so much a personality assessment, even though I find those fascinating always. It's more of, how am I being right now? What's influencing the way I make decisions? Am I focused on making other people happy? Am I working well with other people? Am I being courageous or not? And the reason that it's powerful for me anyway is that now we can see, okay, if I want to move forward in the last 10 years of my career, or I want to make some big decision, where am I starting from and what do I need to work on? And so we might talk about, what would it look like if you weren't letting fear drive these decisions? What might you be doing? So that's the idea.
Yeah, I love that. Great.
So with that context, Cheryl, is the word fear, are you looking at that as a secondary emotion or a primary? Like for me, when I think of the word fear, I'm afraid of heights. So there was a time in my life where I was not reinventing myself, but I was forced into a different pathway. So I purposely did things like I jumped off a cliff, I went whitewater rafting, I did a really big zip line to step out of my fear because I was seeing it as this thing that was holding me back. When you're talking about fear in your context, are you talking about things like that? Or are you talking about getting so consumed with perfectionism that you're purposely holding yourself back? Or are you talking about what my fear was when you're saying that word?
More the second one. Great question. I absolutely get it. It's not so much about what we fear. It's more about, I might even call it a mood. Fear is always there keeping us safe. I mean, our brains are always trying to keep us safe. There's always some aspect of that going on. But if we're handling it in a healthy way, we're noticing a risk or we're noticing something, wondering, is that going to be okay if I do that? And then we process that and we decide, yes, it's going to be okay, and we move on, as opposed to getting stuck. So more of an underlying keep me safe kind of thing.
So how does a woman start to tell the difference between actual wisdom and fear? Like, when do you know if it's just your experience being smart?
Yeah, it's a fair question, because if something happened to you in the past, you have all this life wisdom by the time you get to your 40s, your 50s, right? So if something happened to you in the past and you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I want to do this because it's reminding me of the time when I got really embarrassed because that decision didn't make any sense, and that's valid, I would say there's a couple of maybe signs to look for. I've seen people do a few different things. If the fear is taking over, sometimes it might look like you're saying yes to everything. Believe it or not, you don't want to upset anyone. You're doing all the things. You don't want to miss out on anything. There's some fear of missing out happening or fear of upsetting someone. That's probably never a good decision. That's not wisdom in terms of deciding what you want to be involved in. So that there's a sign there. Sometimes it is just maybe numbing yourself with TV, with food, with alcohol, with all the things to avoid making a decision because it's scary. But we all know we would be better off once the decision is made and we can actually take a step forward. I think wisdom is when you take those things into account and you find a way to take even one little tiny step forward and just try. And then maybe a next step, as opposed to getting stuck in that avoidance.
Well, I think that the term fear, like the word hard, is the life that you want is on the other side of hard. And sometimes we think hard means don't do it, stop sign, stay back, because it's your fear taking over. You don't want to look silly. You don't want to say the wrong thing. You don't want to make a wrong step, right? So you stay here. But on the other side of that hard is where the life you want. So that's where the discernment, I guess would be the good word, between wisdom and fear.
I like that word a lot. And I think it's even a little bit easier if we find something we really want. Maybe it's some sort of higher purpose. Maybe it's some sort of goal. If we find something we really want, we're willing to go through the harder parts, right? And so that helps to have something that is exciting or gets us going. And then we're willing to do some of the hard stuff sometimes.
It would be when you take action in spite of fear, and that's when you gain the wisdom. And so the more you do that, the more you take that action in spite of the fear, in spite of the indecision, in spite of the risks, and then you find that, well, the world didn't end, even if things didn't go according to plan. You've learned so much more than you risked. And then that's where our wisdom comes from. We keep acting, we keep going forward, we keep overcoming those times where we're overwhelmed and we're stuck and we're in fear. And then we're on the other side of it and we're like, wow, okay, I survived. And so that gives us the wisdom that we need to keep, going through those situations.
I agree. And a friend of mine actually said something to me that I always kind of hold on to now. It was years ago when I was thinking about becoming a coach. I was saying to her, I don't know, should I do this? I'm not sure. Would people listen to me? And that's not really what coaching is about, but I hadn't started it yet. So I was just trying to figure that out. And she said, you're 50 years old. Do you know how much life experience you have? Of course, that's valuable. Look at what you've been through. And that's true of everybody, right? Like we've made it through something, all of us. And I think maybe we don't give ourselves credit for that sometimes as well.
Absolutely.
So true. Yes. Yeah, you get that imposter syndrome because you don't have a certificate. Life experience is your certificate. Like that is more valid than any class I think you could sit through. You also talk about complaining as a way of making conversation, which is so true. Like, I think everybody does that, right? It's an easy thing to talk about. Everybody can jump on the bandwagon. So we do that. It keeps us stuck. Can you unpack that a bit? Why do people do that? How do you stop doing that?
Yeah, this was such a transformation for me. Goodness, I didn't realize that I was complaining as much as I was. And this is going back a number of years as well. I was a high school teacher for 12 years. And at the time I was thinking I was getting a bit burned out. What else was I going to do? I had started a little direct selling business on the side. I was seeing how would that go. And one day I was in the kitchen talking to my husband about the direct selling stuff. And he said, you don't have to do that if you don't like it. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, all you do is complain about it all the time. And I had no idea, no clue. I just thought I was making conversation. And so that conversation with him, I started to listen to how I would talk to people. We would be at school in the teacher's lounge and the conversation would be, oh, the traffic was bad and the copier's broken and oh, the weather's so gross. And that's just how we made conversation, exactly as you said, Tracy. Like we just do it. We don't think about it. But I realized I was doing it all the time. In every conversation, I meet up with my friends. We're like, man, the metro was slow and gosh, it's cold outside, all the time. And
So
it matters. And I decided, okay, what if I didn't do this? What if I tried to say something different? And there was a period of time when I kind of forgot how to have a conversation, to be honest. So I would say if you're listening to this, try it. Try avoiding the traffic and the weather and the broken copier and the whatever conversations and see what you can think of to say, because it took me a while to
It
figure it
does.
out.
It's hard to come up with a positive thing to talk about. It's the crazy
Yes.
thing. I went through this myself.
Yes.
But do you find, as you were saying those things, I was picturing complaining in a conversation like a shield. It's almost the way to keep you slapping in the shallow end of a conversation, and it keeps you quote unquote safe, right?
Mm.
But it also keeps you very, very alone.
Yeah. I agree with that completely. It's like a safe, easy conversation. You know that everybody's going to be fine with what you're saying because they'll be saying something similar. And I guess, on a certain level, there's nothing wrong with that. And at the same time, you're not talking about anything that is helpful or creates relationships really in any way. And our brains are listening to us. So if all we do in every conversation is talk about the things that are wrong, well, unfortunately, gradually, you also are training your brain to look for the things that are wrong. And that's a big problem. And the other thing that I think is a big problem with this habit is sometimes we do it to make ourselves seem smaller compared to who we're talking to. Meaning somebody's upset about, I don't know, they didn't get a promotion or they did poorly on something, and we say, oh yeah, me too, that happened to me. And I mean, you want to be kind, but I don't think we want to be making ourselves smaller as a habit either. There's like a fine line there.
Well, to take that a little further, Cynthia, I understand exactly what you mean, that there's a safety in that because you don't have to share yourself. You're not going to be divulging any of your true, real feelings or thoughts or opinions if you're just complaining. And what goes along with that, I'm thinking, is also something that we might tend to do, which is judging and gossip. So they kind of go together, that complaining and judging and that gossiping kind of gives us that camaraderie among women to be talking about something that we might either all agree on or all understand, about each other. And then we don't have to make ourselves a target by sharing ourselves or our opinions or our stands or beliefs or whatever. And at the same time, maybe make these little cliques or start to divide ourselves into groups of people that do this or do that. You got a complaining group, you got a judging group, you got a gossip group, And so it really does foster this disconnection, especially among women, because what we need is encouragement and support and cheerleading for ourselves, even when we say things that others don't really understand right away or don't agree with right away. Just because it's new or original or kind of bold or something, we don't like to stick our head out like that, And so we really need to flip that on its head. So not only is it personally not benefiting us to have that negative cycle and looking out for negative things and maybe even having our life manifest in a negative way or attract those negative events, but it could also damage the relationships that we have with others and make others around us also go negative. It could really have this ripple effect. And so we really want to watch how we speak to ourselves internally, what we say externally, how we relate to others. And so that could be really widespread. We don't need any more of that.
Yeah. If you're talking with someone who's always complaining too, like you can't have a happy conversation with them, you're gonna start avoiding them. Like you just can't enjoy having that conversation. And I think too, like when you're saying, Lorraine, if you're always looking for those conversations or those groups of people, those cliques, you might want to be looking to see what's going on, like what's causing you to look for that. What is your story?
Yeah. I spent many years not having relationships with women just for those types of issues. So many women were complaining and judging, and they were condescending, and they had these cliques, and they were very gossipy. And I just wanted to talk about like real stuff. I just want to talk about really interesting things, books or things about psychology and the way that people act and the things that you can do to improve yourself and everything. And that's just no fun. I mean, if you want to drink and bitch about someone, that is just so much more fun, So it took me many years to get back into creating relationships with women and doing it on my terms. Real women who weren't afraid to just be themselves. And I must admit that when we get older, like our midlife, there are a lot more of us out there like that. For some reason, we just get much more bold, much more real, much more, I'm tired of all that crap. And so this is the time for us to really thrive.
I agree completely, and probably had a similar path to what you went through as well as I was trying to figure this out. And one thing that I have thought about in the past few years is I've watched some women who are older or my age, I suppose, go into this very kind of bitter mode more often. So it's like complaining, but even more. And I've been sort of observing that and thinking, where does that come from? Maybe it's regret that they didn't make the decision when they could have made the decision and do the thing they wanted to do with their lives. And now it feels like it's too late. But I think it also comes from not ever doing what you're describing and deciding that I'm worthy of being around people who make me feel good. And I want to make other people feel good. And I want to do what I want to do. And I'm worthy of that. And so let me go find it. And it's powerful for sure.
So what does taking a little bit better care of yourself actually mean to you, Cheryl? Because I think a lot of women hear self-care and they immediately picture some big crazy thing they have to do and they just don't have the time or energy for.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had so many conversations with people who say, I can't listen to any more of these podcasts where they tell me the 10 habits I have to do every morning and then everything's going to be okay. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want 10 habits to do every morning either. It's too much. I don't want that. So it sort of became a theme for me, is how do we take care of ourselves and not have it be this hard thing that I got 27 things to do every day. Otherwise, I'm doing a bad job at taking care of myself. Yeah. And I think the reason I started talking about this is that our bodies are changing. And sometimes we get frustrated about things that happen or how we feel. And then that sort of expands into the other parts of life. And so when I started saying just take a little bit better care of yourself, it's keep it really simple. So food and water, like drink more water, eat food that makes you feel good. And then that's the physical. And then the mind part is be really careful who we're comparing ourselves to, because that's a trap that we fall into a lot at any age. And I kind of thought that was a trap that my teenagers fell into, and then we'd all get better, but we all do it. Yeah. And then the other thing is glimmers. I love this idea of glimmers, which basically just means tiny moments of joy. So if you actually take a minute to pay attention to those and really feel it, you can train your brain to recognize them more often. Like, oh my gosh, I put exactly the right amount of cream in my coffee. This is amazing. Or look at the sun. What a beautiful day. Tiny stuff, tiny. But we start to see it more and more and more, and it really can change our outlook.
So I love that. Little glimmer moments. I'd never heard of that. I like that. Not that terminology of it. Yeah.
Right.
That's nice. Yeah.
It sounds a little like gratitude, your little moments of gratitude. You're just so grateful for this great cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Grateful that, you woke up and your feet didn't hurt when you first started walking. Those little moments, you had a good day.
I was just going to say, and it's also avoiding, okay, you have to write it in a journal and you have to note down 3 every day. And not that there's anything wrong with that. That's great for people who want to do it and really powerful. And at the same time, sometimes it feels like, I don't want to do all that. Let's keep it easy, just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. With your nervous system, if you're always in that fight or flight or stressed out, you can't just stop. You take vacation and you get anxiety because your nervous system doesn't know what calm, that stresses it out. So those little glimmer moments all along help train your nervous system too, that you're safe and it's okay to be calm and happy. So that's very important.
And a lot of times we don't pay attention to how we're feeling in any given moment. And I think this helps with that a little bit too. If you just kind of pause and go, oh, this feels good. I feel happy. Whatever it is, it's like a little bit of training and recognizing that as well.
Cheryl, you have a free resource called the Story Circle that helps women recognize how they're feeling and what to do about it. Can you tell us a bit about that, like how it works and who it's really for?
Yeah, it's funny that we actually were talking about that very thing. So very nicely done in terms of the question. I think that a lot of us have trouble. If I said to just your typical 40, 50 something woman on the street, how are you feeling right now? I think we have trouble answering that question. The answer is more like, well, I feel like I need to hurry up because I'm going to be late. Well, that's not really a feeling, you know? We're not used to saying, I feel frustrated, or I feel empowered, or I feel, embarrassed, or I feel whatever it is. We sort of lose track of that. And it's very powerful from a mindset perspective to be able to recognize how we're feeling, and then to be able to sort of pause and say, well, what's going on in my head? What am I telling myself on a loop that's making me feel like that? Because even just recognizing it, sometimes we go, wait, what? No, that's ridiculous. And we can catch it. So that's what the story cycle is about, is giving a wheel of emotions, explaining can you pick from all these different emotion words, how are you feeling right now? And then, okay, let's pause for a second. What's going on in your head? Just like a little introduction to that, to let people try it out and see what they recognize.
Nice. I spoke with someone a couple of days ago, and she talked about speaking out loud. So if you have a thought like that, just speak it out loud. It's crazy the difference that makes than keeping it inside your head, thinking it. Right?
I think that we're so hard on ourselves. I mean, maybe there is a scientific reason, but for me, it really comes from, we are never going to say to anyone else the stuff we say to ourselves. And so when you hear it out loud, you go, oh, now I'm thinking maybe I'm saying it to someone else. Oh, gosh, I would never say that. Goodness.
That is definitely true, but there is also a neuroscience basis for that. And I don't know if I've mentioned it on the show before, but I did read this story, and they did this experiment, and there was four men, and they were put in isolation, and it was supposed to last 3 or 4 days, and no light. I mean, completely dark, no sound, complete isolation. And of course, one by one, they didn't make it, hours. After 4 hours, one was out. After 7 hours, the other one was out, and they did not last. Well, one man lasted the entire term. And when he came out, he was fine. And what he said he did was he spoke out loud the entire time, talking to himself. And it does something to your brain and your nervous system and everything, the vibration of speaking, the hearing yourself. It lights up all of the senses. And I think it gives you a location in space when you're disoriented, because you can hear yourself, it bounces off the walls, you can touch yourself. So he was doing all of that the whole time. And I found it just fascinating that something like that could be so powerful, and that the opposite could be so detrimental, just having complete blackout of all your senses and how quickly we react to that. So I thought it was really
That is interesting. I have a story I heard on a podcast. It's good, but it's bad. So I'm going to share it because it's to do with the brain and how powerful the brain is. So it was done a long time ago, before they really cared about animals and the safety of animals. It was done with rats, and they put the rat in a cylinder of water, and it would swim and swim until it would pass away. They did this over, and the rats on average would last 15 minutes. So then they would get to that point where it was about 15 minutes, and they would save the rat, and they'd dry it off, clean it up and everything else. They'd put it back in, and it would swim till it got to that point. They'd take it out, dried up. And so they did this repeatedly until the rat realized something's going to save me. And they went from swimming for 15 minutes to 60 minutes, because it knew that somebody was going to save it. It didn't give up. That's how powerful the brain is. Incredible story. I was just blown away by that.
And very impressive.
Yes.
Okay, so Cheryl, before we do wrap up, if somebody listening to the show, what would be one thing you would really hope they hear today?
Would hope that they hear to try to be kind to yourself at least a little bit more often. We get so self-critical so easily, and it comes from all sorts of things, brain science as well as other things. And if we can just switch that a little bit to stop telling ourselves that we look disgusting or that we can't make a decision or that we whatever it is, and just give ourselves some grace, it really does make a difference. And so even just recognizing that, just catching it a little more often, you deserve kindness. Treat yourself as much as you can in the way you would treat your friend or your sister or whatever the appropriate thing is. It makes a big difference.
Beautiful. Well said. Thank you very much. Cheryl, this conversation is exactly what I hoped it would be. It's been fun. I have a feeling that a lot of women listening right now are going to need maybe a minute to sit with some of the stuff that we've said today, like just to really think about that. So the idea, right, the fear has been quietly making decisions for all of us while we call it being careful, and that complaining has been keeping us company while also keeping us stuck, and taking care of ourselves doesn't have to be this big massive overhaul, right? So that's a lot to take in. Well, that's what she said. Anyway, before we let you go, where can the women listening find you, connect with you and grab your free resource?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. And yes, it has been fun. So you can find my podcast, Mind Your Midlife, anywhere you listen to podcasts. And my website is CherylPFisher.com. And then the resource is CherylPFisher.com/storycycle. So I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Cheryl P. Fisher, kind of all over the place. So that hopefully will be easy.
Beautiful. Fantastic. We will absolutely make sure all those links are in the show notes. So go grab it. Grab it all.
Yes.
Good. And now for those that are listening to the show, where has fear been showing up in your life disguised as being careful? And what's one thing you've been putting off because of it? Tell us in the comments. You might be surprised how many women are sitting with the exact same thing. And if this episode hits home, share it with someone in your life who needs to hear it. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Plus, it really helps us reach more people. Thanks so much for being here. And remember, in a world where you can be anything, be happy, be healthy, and be kind. See you next week.